Yeah, so I'm a social media manager and I do a lot of different marketing stuff. Basically, I do content creation, community management, basically all hats for marketing, basically for Jump Button. I've also done some contributions and was a featured artist in Red Hat Comics' Pixels Forever book, which basically is like a massive book that just showcases everything pixel art and helps people sort of get into sort of the games industry through the form and medium of pixel art. Also on the side, I run my own social media account where I run a community called the Artist Tavern, which is basically a place where artists can come in, build healthy habits with us, where basically if they're feeling that they have imposter syndrome, where they're feeling like they can't really feel motivated or they're lacking sort of that discipline to get, creating without improving, we basically help them get into routines and start building like an environment for them to actually progress as artists. So this is some of the work I've done just to show you guys that I can animate. But yeah, on Instagram as well, I'm more of an educator than just an animator. So I do a mix of both creating animations for brands and like custom commissions. And also I teach, which is something I found to enjoy just through Instagram and creating content through that. The first thing I'm going to talk about is for the workflow stuff. So how many of you guys actually organize your files for any sort of projects that you do? Oh, good. So we may be able to skip through this bit. So yeah, this is how I usually go about my production thing. Obviously, it's oversimplified. Everyone knows this. But specifically for each bit, I just wanted to emphasize the fact that pre-production is probably what I would always recommend people to spend the longest on. I've worked with a lot of clients who just want to skip straight to production. And I'm like, look, we're going to have to redo stuff if anything goes wrong. If we're not testing properly in pre-production, stuff always fails, and then you have to redo stuff. People's time's wasted and people's money is wasted. When you mention the money, that's when they're like, okay, maybe we'll stay a little bit longer in pre-production. So obviously, depending on the project, if it's a project that has to be done in a month, you usually want to portion as much as you can for the pre-production side of it, say like a week or two, and then the other stuff you can then add a little bit and sort of adjust to however workflow you need. But usually you want to kind of iterate throughout production and pre-production and just make sure that you have a fluid sort of system in place to be able to work properly without needing to then redo everything you did. Hopefully you guys all label your layers properly as well. I know I've worked with a lot of animators in the past who don't, and the amount of times it's literally taken me like a day to decipher the After Effects file they've sent me, and I'm like, I don't know what any of this is. So please just emphasizing fully, always have a system in place for yourself, or if you're working with a client that doesn't have it, please implement a system. Because if you don't have a system for anything when you're working, it'll become a nightmare to find files, to find which version is which. You might render the wrong thing, and then that just causes more problems than it's worth. So always label stuff. Doesn't have to be like complicated, as you can see here. I even have spelling mistakes in some of mine because sometimes I don't check. But in general, always make sure that everything is as labeled and as clear as possible for yourself. And basically, if a stranger were to come and touch your After Effects file or Cinema 4D file or whatever, they should know where everything is without needing to talk to you. That's essentially the summary of this little bit. These are some of the tools I use. I'm not sure how many of you guys also use them, but this is specifically for my pixel workflow. But emphasizing on the previous point for pre-production, research and planning. Notion is an amazing little tool. I don't know, how many of you guys use Notion or have heard of Notion? Okay, that's more than I usually get. Notion, lifesaver. Like, I literally use it to build a whole database of exercises that I give to my community, and then they can customize their own art exercises within it. For projects, you can do the same thing. So you can have massive amounts of projects with different tasks, and you can organize it, customize it, helps everyone keep on track, and it really helps with the productivity side of things as well. So highly recommend keeping Notion as in mind if you are looking to basically work with a new workflow or to build something around that, either for yourself, for clients, or if you're looking to start your own agency, basically. Helps with management of all that stuff. Just to go a little bit into my pre-production stuff, we'll go quickly through this bit, seeing as you guys seem to know a lot. Basically, this is what pre-production has, a lot of things that people can get into. So within animation, a lot of people can specifically get into the industry through being storyboard artists, concept artists, and other similar things alongside, as well as writing, as Corey told about earlier. And essentially, it's the one that I, again, heavily emphasize people to stay the longest in, because then once you get to this, it's a lot easier to say this is final and we don't have to change it anymore. Hence why I always tell clients to keep with the pre-production as much as possible, then come to the production. Production obviously is just cleaning up assets, but obviously it seems that you guys, only one of you guys is working with animation, so I'll go a little bit quicker on it. Post-production, just going into visual effects and all that stuff and adding music. One thing on music that I've found from my experience is always start from the beginning. Everything from like your original rough cuts should always have music to begin with, so then when you get to the end, you already know what the beats of the music are and everything's already pre-planned out. And there should be no issue when implementing everything together in sort of the final edit. Here's some books that I recommend people. These are all related to sort of they're more heavily towards the pre-production and sort of idea generation side of things. Into the Woods is a great thing for script writing. If you're looking to see how movies are made and how you can break down a story into 3 acts, it's a great book that's got some stuff in there you can read about. Animated storytelling, if you want to learn like just the overall like process of animation in a bit more depth, Liz Blaze's book is amazing for that. And Effect Perfection by James Victoria is another amazing book that has lots of ideas to help you sort of see yourself differently as an artist and to sort of hopefully make you feel less like you're an imposter or less like you're not actually doing well. This book will give you that mindset to be like, okay, maybe I can try this, or gives you different ways of approaching a problem you may be stuck on. So, color theory. How many of you guys know your color? Okay, that's a few, all right. So I'll go through some basics for those who maybe not initiate into color, and then we'll get to the bit where I want to talk about making your own color palettes and doing color studies. So, what makes a color? For digital particularly, obviously for traditional is a little bit different, but this is what I normally use and this is what I teach my community and other people who want to learn about color. Basically, hue, saturation, value. You can read what that's on there, but we'll skip over to the actual color palette bit and rules of thumb actually. So whenever you're working with color, the main thing you want to do is that you want to make sure that you have good contrast. I see a lot of, whenever my community sends in work for feedback, the most common mistake they do with all their animations or digital art they send in is literally that the contrast is bad. So basically it's when the values are all the same, like you can't really tell colors apart, particularly say if you have like a blue and then like a light blue. If the values aren't right, when you sort of squint, the colors merge together and you lose the image. Basically what you want to do, or a good way to fix that, turn your image grayscale, which some people don't know, some people do, but grayscale image, you can see what values are actually in your image. And if you want something to pop out, you can just change the value of the color and it should hopefully fix the image itself. Hue shifting. How many of you guys know about hue shifting? That's another one not many people know about. You know hue shifting? Okay, good, all right. I'll teach that in a bit as well. And the last bit is whenever you want to have a color palette, or at least this is more graphic design, but it will apply to animation as well because at the end of the day, it's all design. Usually there's recommended to have like 60% of a dominant color, about 30% for more like a secondary complementary, or if you go with your color schemes, one of the other colors you've chosen, and then 10% for like an accent color to make some things pop a little bit. Again, rule of thumb, but you don't necessarily have to stick to it, you can always break it. Hence, I mean, it's color, it's subjective, even like the first bit of the slide. Color is not what it seems. Again, there's so much interaction with color, we can't really cover it in 10 minutes. But yes, hue shifting. This is a magical little formula that I found and I've sort of condensed to be as simple as possible. When you want to make a color, or you want to make like a color palette, the easiest way is start with your base color and then you can darken it or brighten it in a way that isn't just adding black or white. Because that either muddies the color or just turns the color a little bit weird and you get like a really, just like not really dynamic color palette. Hue shifting, you can make a color palette just with one color. Simply just shift the values around depending on what you want. This is the easiest formula that I could get people to remember. So if you want to take a picture of it or whatever, or I'm not sure if the presentation is being sent afterwards, that's basically it. As you can see, this is a really extreme version of hue shifting. Basically hue shifting, like how many of you guys know, the color picker in all software? Basically imagine that and you're just literally just moving the hue around a little bit and you're playing around with those values to that little formula. And hopefully you should get a color palette from one. That's pretty good. I don't know why the images have gone really blurry. Either way, this is an exercise that was summarized from Greg Gunn's video that's on screen. So if you guys do want to see the full exercise, Greg Gunn's work in general with color is amazing and I highly recommend sort of giving it a look if you can. But this is a very simplified version of one of the tutorials he gave, which I always teach people because it's amazing to see how much you can do with just one color once you learn some of the basic principles. So basically you take your base color, you hue shift it, and then you duplicate the color twice, the color palette, twice. Then you hue shift the whole palette as well. And then using the schemes I showed you earlier, which are these ones, you can then create your own color palettes just from the one color. And you can get results just from that one color. So it's a really powerful way to, if you don't really know what you want to do with like your project just yet, you can always just start with the one color you want, you envision it, test it out, and then see how much you can then add different or apply different things to it. So at the end of the day, you do want to test because it is color. Everything is subjective with it. But yeah, color studies. So these are some submissions that my community have kindly given in, just to sort of show you guys the best ways to practice colors if you don't already. How many of you guys know about color studies to see? I've heard of them. Okay. So color studies, for those who don't know, is basically taking an image reference that you find online, can be anything, and then trying to replicate the colors, as you can see here, in a time limit. So say an hour or 2 hours. Hence, kind of like a figure drawing or like a life drawing session, but with color. However, because this is digital, the main emphasis is to not use the color picker. So you have to visually see what the color is and try and then replicate it without color picking. Obviously, you can check afterwards if you want to see like how close you got to it, but in essence, this is the best exercise that they've found to get better at color. This guy here, Golifi, he joined us last year and he had no idea how to play color. I got him doing some color studies and this is where he got to. He couldn't find the old ones, unfortunately, otherwise I would also be showing those. But I think the one on the left was one that he did a couple of months ago, and then the one on the right is one that he's done more recently, according to what he said. But yeah, color studies, look them up. There's loads of tutorials on YouTube to teach you guys more about it. Again, don't have time to cover all on here, but please do color studies if you want to go further into it. And for further reading, recommend all these books. I'll go over Interaction of Color particularly and Color Dictionary because those are two that I personally use all the time. Interaction of Color by Josef Albers is basically like a massive experimentation of color in one little book. So it's got like how color interacts with each other, what happens when you place things together, illusions that color can create, because again, the eyes deceive us. What we see as color, some people may not see. Again, because everyone's eyes are different, people may see color differently, the interaction in certain areas, or if you pair two colors together, all of that affects different things, and this book literally has everything in there that you could ever want to experiment with color. And it's plus super interesting to see what illusions you can create, and just sort of seeing how easy it is to trick the brain on what colors they see. Dictionary of Color is a bit more like an overview on every single color that is sort of being classified by designers. And it gives you pre-made color palettes if you are looking to sort of get a standoff point. That's not the word. Like a starting off point, that's what it is. And basically it gives you like the history of the color to see if it matches with what you want to do. So if you're doing, say, a project that you want red to be like the predominant thing, but it doesn't fit exactly the narrative, you can link the narrative and the color a little bit more closely if you know where the color has been used before and seeing a little bit more of the history about the color. As every culture has different uses of color, like so there was a video on Vox that explained different colors that exist in different regions, and it's super interesting to sort of see how you can tie narrative and color together to create a really cool piece of animation. The other two are really cool. I haven't read Color and Light, but everyone recommends it. My whole community always tells me to talk more about it. I've yet to read it. It's on the reading list. And Color Theory by Patti Mojica is also pretty good for just getting you the essentials if you're looking just to start playing with it. I hope that's within the 10 minutes. Thank you for listening. And yeah, any questions on color, pixel art, or any of that stuff, happy to talk about that afterwards. Thank you very much.